Hello and congratulations! You are watching this video because you just received your brand new AirSense 11 device. And today we're going to walk through the setup, cleaning, and resupply for your machine. My name is Narina and I'm a respiratory therapist and sleep coach at Empower Sleep. Let's get started. Now, a few things to note before you get started with your machine. This device is pre-calibrated to your prescription settings, so when you plug it in and you start using it, there's no need for you to make any sort of pressure adjustments as it is already on the prescription pressures by the physician. Something else to note about this little device is that it has a built-in cellular modem. That means that it transmits your data wirelessly without any sort of Wi-Fi or Bluetooth connection. All you have to do is plug it in and it will transmit your data within just a few hours of you waking up for bedtime so that we can review your data with you and ensure that things are working smoothly. Now, in front of me, I have a few different components for your CPAP device. The first thing we're going to start with is your power cord. Now, your power cord comes apart into two different pieces, so we want to make sure that it is tightly fastened before getting started, and we should see a green light appear on the power brick. Now, at the end of your power cord is where you insert it into the back of the machine, like so. And your device should turn on without any issues afterwards. Something to keep in mind about your power cord is that it is 110 to 220 voltage. So when you travel internationally, you don't need a converter or any special tools, but maybe just an adapter to make sure that it can plug in with the two-prong outlet. Outside of that, it is necessary that you try to plug your device directly into a wall outlet. Sometimes plugging your machine into an extension cord can cause the power to short in the middle of the night. So ideally, a wall outlet is going to be the best bet to keep your machine running completely throughout the entire night. Now, on the device or on the side of the unit, we see this big gaping hole, and this is where your humidifier goes. Now, your humidifier is made to provide humidification while you sleep so that you don't wake up feeling like your mouth is as dry as leather. And when we look at the humidifier, we see a few different words on here. We see distilled water only. So ideally filling this with distilled water to the best of your ability to make sure that we don't have any sort of white calcium buildup stuck at the bottom of your water tank. You can use bottled or filtered water. However, if you ever need to use tap water, unless you feel comfortable drinking it, I advise that you boil it first and let it cool down just to kill any harmful bacteria inside of the water. We also want to pay attention to the maximum line. Overfilling past the maximum line can cause issues where you might get water in your tubing and your mask, or it might just be gurgling all night. So it is advised that you fill it up slightly below the maximum line on a nightly basis and refill every night before bed, just so it doesn't run out in the middle of the night. And so I'm going to go ahead and insert my water tank into the side of my unit until I hear it click. The way that we open our water tank is by locating the little water drop symbol on the side, placing your fingers in that little lip, and opening like a clam. Now, on the back of your unit, we have a pretty important components here. We have the air filter door. So when I open up this door, I should see a small cotton rectangular piece, which is your air filter. We'll go through resupply later on. However, this is swapped out every month or so. So just keep that in mind. Some people are not aware of their air filter, and when they look at it in a few months, it looks like a little bunny rabbit, really gray and dusty. So we want to make sure that it always looks clean because that's the air that we're breathing in. Now, on the back of the unit, we also see this large hole. And right above that, we see this white arrow etched into the back of the machine. Your device came with a heated tubing, and this heated tubing actually inserts into the device in a very specific way. So each end of the tube looks a little different, but we do see that one end has a white arrow and a small electrical chip, which is what allows it to actually heat up. So I'm going to go ahead and align my white arrows and click it into the back of the machine until I hear an actual clicking noise. To remove my tubing, I squeeze down these tabs on the side and I wiggle and pull out. And here we go. Now, a few more things to note is that your device is touchscreen. So we don't really have lots of buttons on this device. However, on the top of the machine, we do see a power button. Now, this is a button that you can use, of course, to power on the device. However, your machine is programmed to turn on automatically when you start using your breath and, breathing into the mask, and it should just turn on that way. But you can opt to use the power button to turn the machine on and off. Right next to the power button, we see a very tiny little rectangle here, but that's a light sensor. So with this touchscreen device, if I have my hand placed over the light sensor for an extended period of time, my screen will start to get really dark because the machine thinks that you're in a dark room. So by removing your hand after a few seconds, the light should turn back on. However, when you actually have the therapy running and active, you will notice that the machine goes completely black after a few seconds, which is normal. We don't want the machine keeping up a nightlight and keeping you up in the middle of the night, because that is the opposite of what we're trying to do with CPAP. So that is just a little bit about the outer workings of the unit. Now, despite, regardless of what mask you received, there should be a mask connected to your tubing in order for this to work. This is the AirTouch F20 mask. Some of the masks have like a long corrugated tubing that are connected to the mask itself, and that attaches to your long tubing, but some masks just have a direct connection. And now your machine is ready to start. Let's talk a little bit about cleaning, because the more that we take care of our supplies, the better that our machine will take care of us. On a daily basis, you want to wipe down or completely just hand wash your mask cushion. That's going to be the part of the mask that makes contact with your skin. So on the AirTouch F20 full face mask, this part here would be your cushion. However, with this particular mask, I would go ahead and wipe it down every day. But with this mask, because it's memory foam, I cannot submerge it in warm, soapy water. So my resupply schedule will also be replacing this once a month and never, ever cleaning this with soap and water. And so what we're going to do with this mask in particular is we're going to remove the mask before we engage in our weekly deep cleaning. However, it comes down to the cushion. The way to identify what part is the cushion is typically the soft portion that's making contact with your skin. And we'll be wiping that down every single day. The reason being, we don't want any sort of facial oils or residue to build up on the mask and potentially cause like a slip and slide effect. And so that can lead to lots of leakage, acne breakouts, or just skin irritation in general. On a weekly basis, your cleaning will look a little different. You'll be taking the entire CPAP mask, unless you have the AirTouch F20, your CPAP tubing, and your water tank. And you're going to completely submerge them in warm, soapy water for about 15 minutes. The electrical chip on the back of your tubing can also be submerged in water as well. But you'll just let them soak with some sort of mild dish soap or detergent. So you can use your Dawn dish soap, you can use your shampoo, but we want to avoid any sort of alcohol or bleach, as these can wear down the materials and often leave a very strong smell. So you'll just get everything soaking for about 15 minutes, rinse your supplies off, and leave them to air dry. We don't want to expose them to direct sunlight or some sort of like dishwasher, because that can melt or damage your products. And when you're talking about your tubing, ideally we hang up the tubing so that way the water can drain out and you're not using the tubing that is a little soggy or kind of splashing water on your face throughout the night. So that kind of takes care of cleaning. I usually don't recommend any sort of auto cleaners. Typically, those are not FDA approved, and they do void the warranty on your device. So things that use activated oxygen or ozone or UV lights cannot be used on your supplies, please. I have had patients where maybe they start using some of those cleaners, they start to develop wheezing or coughing during the day, or they're just very sensitive to the smell that they leave. So it is best practice to just continue with soap and water. And when you're wiping down your mask parts on a daily basis, you can use unscented baby wipes, CPAP wipes, anything, again, that does not include alcohol or bleach. Resupply, and why does it matter? Now, resupply is very, very important to keep your materials in tip-top shape. I mentioned earlier that the better that you take care of your supplies, the better your machine will take care of you, and that's exactly correct. The reason that we want to make sure that we're changing out supplies is for wear and tear purposes. If you're, continuing to use the same mask for maybe a year, that means that the headgear will wear down, the cushion will wear down, and you'll often get really bad mask leakage, or your mask will be very tight to the point of discomfort. Sometimes with the tubing, we can start to have holes in the tubing. Maybe the heated element doesn't work. The water tank might start to get burn marks on it or a little bit of rust. So we definitely want to change out our supplies. And for the air filter, of course, we want to make sure the air that we're breathing is really nice and clean so that we don't get sick over time. And so when it comes down to your resupply schedule, everything is kind of based on a different schedule. So it's very important that maybe you set reminders in your phone, on your calendar, or whatever works for you to kind of keep up with these supplies. Your tubing is replaced every 3 months. Your air filter is replaced monthly. However, if you live next to a highway or you sleep with the window open, you might notice that it gets really dusty or discolored in about 2 weeks, and you are recommended to replace on a biweekly schedule in that case. Your water tank should be replaced every 6 months. Your entire CPAP mask should be replaced every 3 months. And just the cushion alone should be replaced monthly. If you have a nasal mask or a nasal pillow, so a mask that covers your nose, goes under your nose or in your nose, if you're getting your supplies through insurance, they will likely suggest maybe a bi-weekly replacement schedule, which is completely fine. If you start to notice that your mask is wearing down at that 2-week mark, it's a good idea on a nasal mask or nasal pillows or cradle to replace bi-weekly. However, as we discussed, all of these will be on different schedules, so it's important that you just keep track. Some of my users in the past have had like a little bit of masking tape on an area that's unaffected, and they'll put like the date that they replaced it or the date that it's due to change out. So on the tubing, it might be, maybe on the gray rubber, on the corrugated tubing part, somewhere on the water tank. For mask and air filter, it can get a little tricky. But those would be some quick tips and best practices on how and when to change out your supplies. Obtaining your new supplies shouldn't take a lot of legwork. Oftentimes, you will be able to get regular resupply through your insurance provider, a local durable medical equipment company, or even online vendors. In some cases, you can sign up for auto shipment, so that way they auto ship your supplies on your resupply schedule so that you don't really have to think about when to replace. You get it in the mail and you just know at that point, hey, I got to replace this piece. So hopefully that makes it a little bit easier. I know that we touched on a little bit of travel earlier, but I wanted to actually have a whole segment on this because I know that some of you don't want to stop your lives because you now have a CPAP device. So let's talk a little bit about what we can do to travel and make sure that we're as comfortable as possible. Now, when it comes down to traveling, no one will ever force you to carry distilled water with you. So in that case, again, you can use bottled or filtered water. And if you don't feel comfortable drinking the tap water, please boil it first and let it cool down completely before putting it into your device. Something else about the water chamber to know when you're traveling is that this is not a closed seal. So if you're traveling even short distances with some water in your water tub, it will leak all over the place. So it's best to ensure that your water tank is completely dry before you travel with it. We also touched on a little bit about the power cord, and I just want to reiterate that this is a 110 to 220 voltage cord, meaning that when you travel, you don't need any converters or anything crazy like that, but you might need some sort of adapter for any 2-prong outlets. In any case, if you are going off the grid, you are welcome to purchase a backup battery for your CPAP. Since these guys only run through power, you would need a battery source to go off-grid camping or off-grid with your CPAP device. In addition to that, your CPAP machine is not considered a carry-on or personal item on flights. It's a medical device. So it's important to understand that so you don't feel like you're going to be charged for your CPAP machine. It's ideally best to have your CPAP bag with you at all times to make sure it doesn't get lost or stolen. But if you need to put it in your carry-on, that's totally fine. Usually what you'll do is you'll go through TSA, open up your CPAP bag, and they'll let you in without issues. If you are concerned about any costs associated with bringing your CPAP on travel, please call your airline in advance and ask them about their best travel practices with your CPAP machine. And last but not least, we do want to try to emphasize that you keep your device plugged into a wall outlet to the best of your ability. But when you're traveling, if your only option is extension cord, totally fine. Just go ahead and use that. And last but not least, maybe having some spare cushions for your mask or a spare mask tubing, whatever you might need with you, just in case anything breaks, wears down, or gets lost, so that you have a backup. I want to send you off on your first night of sleep with your CPAP on the best note possible. You don't need to be perfect, just be consistent. And if you have any questions or need some support, don't hesitate to reach out to your sleep coach or your sleep specialist so that we can go ahead and assist you with any issues as they come up. The more you let us know what's going on, the better that we can fix your problems. Thank you so much for listening, and sleep well tonight. Take care.